in this room, you can see 500 years of what Europeans have thought were the most beautiful forms of the human body.
Constructing a statue of yourself or of an ideal athlete is saying something about your position near to the gods.
They made sense of their world by using the human body as a bearer of meaning.
The exhibition I've come to see at the museum is called Defining Beauty, the Body in Ancient Greek Art, and it's looking at the influence the Greeks still have on modern thinking about the human form.
Most of the really path-breaking and historically important sculptures in this exhibition actually come from the democratic period of classical Athens. That covers approximately the 5th century BC and the first half of the 4th. It was 150 years of extraordinary cultural innovation.
No, I think, I don't want to offend any of the others, but I feel like if there's one statue which probably everyone knows above all others, it must be the discus thrower, the Discobolus.
The discus thrower by Myron. So Myron is demonstrating that sculptors can be philosophers too. And he employs more symmetria in his figures than any other sculptor. And he was an obsessive measurer in order to construct, calculate ideal beauty, but there is more than that. He also used the balancing of opposites, which had been the central theme of natural philosophy of the 6th century BC in determining the nature of the world and man's place in it. One arm extends behind, holding the discus, the muscle contracted. The other arm hangs free. One leg is weight-bearing, the other leg is weight-free. One set of toes arch up, the other set of toes curl under. And when you look at the composition of opposites together, you see a construction of balance, harmony, and rhythm. And you also see the arc of a bow running through the arms, and then the zigzag of the string attached to that bow, pulled as if it were the outline of the right flank. And there's this saying of Heraclitus, bios, bios, life is a bow. Life is a continuous entasis, continuous tension between the pushing energy and the pulling energy of life.
As you can see, the Greeks were obsessed with the human body and how they could represent it. And their ideas, some of which are over 2,500 years old, still have a massive impact on how we view ourselves and our own body image today.
I think when you come into the first room of the exhibition and you see the great heroic figures of the discus thrower, you are in the world that we now still regard, as what the athletic male muscular body ought to be. And you are really looking at our modern conceptions of the body.
One of the things about the Greek body in particular is that it's kind of molded our subconscious, if you like, for thinking about how our bodies are or how our bodies should be. Anyone who's spent time working out, anyone who worries about what they eat, anyone who wants to bulk up or slim down, is in their own way responding to a particular aspect that goes all the way back to ancient Greece. No one goes to the gym to look like a Henry Moore, and they go to the gym in order to have the ideal body.
So here's Heracles, demigod and hero. His body type is 2,500 years old. He doesn't look like he's gone out of fashion to me.
No, definitely not. I think that is still the type of body that we want. Obviously, you can see he's got very strong arms and nice abs. We appreciate people who have taken a little bit more time with their bodies. We're in the age of like the gym selfie and your kind of image is your currency.
One of the things that really interests me about Greek sculpture is that everyone says, of course, this is deeply naturalistic, this is deeply lifelike, this is what the body really looks like. Yet there are all sorts of elements that are deeply non-realistic. One of the things people have noticed is what they label the iliac crest. And it's a very strong line, a line of ligament that separates the legs from the torso. If you try and work out very hard in the gym, you can get that line, but you can never get it round the back, which is one of the things that you find on Greek sculptures. Likewise, that deep groove of the chest is something that you could never actually achieve, however hard you try. So there's something kind of hyper-realistic or hyper-naturalistic or hyper-lifelike about Greek sculpture. And so, once again, I think that Greek sculpture has kind of given us an ideal of what the body should be, one that's resonated throughout the last 2,000 years plus of Western art history. And yet there are all sorts of fabrications and artificial conventions at work here.
For the Greeks, looking beautiful was a physical manifestation of being beautiful inside. If you looked good, you probably were moral.
That connection between physical outward beauty and inner ethical goodness is absolutely integral to a Greek idea of the body beautiful. In ancient Greek, the idea is kalokagathia, bit of a mouthful, but it means kalos kai agathos. To be beautiful, to be handsome, is the same as being ethically good. And that's an ideal, an idea that again has resonated throughout the longue durée of Western history.
If you look at the figure, the human figure in ancient Egypt, in ancient Persia, in Assyria, those great empires all have great figural sculpture, but all of them clothe the figure. And to be shown naked in those cultures is to be humiliated. Greece sees the body quite differently. The body is entirely something which can be beautiful, can be virtuous. And your duty as a citizen is to make your body beautiful and to make your mind virtuous.
The nude male body was a uniform of the righteous. It was nude but not naked. Naked is what you are when you're walking down the street and suddenly your trouser elastic goes and your bottom's showing in Athens High Street. That's naked. Or if you behave lewdly, without your clothes on, that's naked. But when you take off your clothes to exercise, or you put on a skin of bronze and go into battle, there you are wearing a new uniform, a virtuous uniform of the citizen pursuing civic values. And the Greeks are unique in this respect.
So, we know the Greeks saw nudity as an honourable state, and physical beauty was intimately connected with moral goodness. No wonder defining beauty was so important to them.
The women, I think it's fair to say, when they're naked, look a great deal more erotically charged than the men. Why is that?
Because it is as sexual objects that they're being represented. There is no male club equivalent for the women. So there are differences of experience implied in the naked or nude representation of women.
Athenian women lived lives very separate from their men. It was a curiously divided society. Now, Athenian women did not do public athletics, and it would have been considered very shocking if they'd shown themselves naked in public.
This is Nereid. She's a sea nymph, and she's got wet, not unreasonably. Nymphs get a terrible press, I think, because their name implies that they are all up for sex all the time, hence nymphomaniac. But actually, the opposite is true. Nymphs are always trying to avoid having sex with male figures who are pursuing them. They're always on the run. She's wearing clothes, but as you can see, they make no difference whatsoever to how naked it makes her look. The clothing is so thin, you can see her navel through it, you can see the line at the bottom of her belly, the lines of the drapery, if anything, draw our eyes down her body to make us gaze at her more longingly. The drapery does nothing to hide her modesty. If anything, it makes her more erotically charged. It's a direct contrast to the way the male statues are shown. Even in this exhibition, which is filled with so many beautiful, living bodies, there's a little bit of death, including this fellow here. This is a Roman grave marker from the 2nd century AD, and it's written in Greek. Beneath the inscription, there is a decomposing body. You can see his skull, his ribs, the bones in his arms and legs. In other words, we're not seeing a celebration of who this person was when they were alive. We're seeing who they're rotting away to be now that they are dead. And the inscription backs that up. It asks the question of a passerby, can you tell who's buried here? Is it Hylas, a very beautiful youth, a friend of Heracles, or is it Thersites, a very plain, ugly man from the Iliad? In other words, was this person beautiful or were they ugly? Doesn't matter. In death, we're all the same. Even in this exhibition, which is filled with so many beautiful, living bodies, there's a little bit of death, including this fellow here. This is a Roman grave marker from the 2nd century AD, and it's written in Greek. Beneath the inscription, there is a decomposing body. You can see his skull, his ribs, the bones in his arms and legs. In other words, we're not seeing a celebration of who this person was when they were alive. We're seeing who they're rotting away to be now that they are dead. And the inscription backs that up. It asks the question of a passerby, can you tell who's buried here? Is it Hylas, a very beautiful youth, a friend of Heracles, or is it Thersites, a very plain, ugly man from the Iliad? In other words, was this person beautiful or were they ugly? Doesn't matter. In death, we're all the same.
The ancient Greeks invented the human body as we now understand it. They invented the human condition. They invented the human being. They took the representation of the human body to an extent of importance in our sense of ourselves that nobody has been able ever since to forget it or to deny it.
I think within our Western subconscious and within our Western culture, we've inherited a Greek ideal of the beautiful figure. We're married to this legacy of antiquity, for better and for worse, and I think we have to recognise that in all sorts of different ways.
The Greek sculpture of the body shapes and changes the way Europeans think about their body today. For Europe, what happens in Greece and subsequently is the determinate model. And that's the point of the exhibition. It changes the way you can look at something you thought you knew.